This world is beyond cruelty.
After months of delays, Dune Part 2 is finally out in cinemas around the world. There are lofty expectations on Dune Part 2, with some, like myself, jesting that the survival of cinema depends on big blockbusters, such as Dune, pulling in those big boy numbers in a post-COVID, streaming-centric world. I saw Dune Part 2 on Friday, opening night, and quite frankly, I can't stop thinking about it. To the point I'm driving my wife mad, and I'm already thinking about going back to see it again. If you saw my YouTube short, then you'll already know I loved the film and scored it a 9 out of 10. And the so-called critics are also equally loving Dune, with it receiving a certified fresh baby on Rotten Tomatoes. But let's deep dive into the good and yes, some of the bad in Dune Part 2. Spoiler warning from this point onwards.
Your blood comes from dukes and great houses. Here, we're equal.
Story-wise, Dune Part 2 immediately picks up from where Part 1 finished. So if you've never read the book or watched the first film, you will probably have a hard time following this. I won't bang on too much about changes from the book, but the most discussed change involves Paul's sister Alia not being born yet in the film, and instead is a talking fetus in the womb. Yep, you heard that correctly, folks. Nowadays, I try to view films or TV shows as their own entity, separate from the source material, and I try to appreciate and respect the craft of both mediums. Of course, some do it better than others, such as Lord of the Rings. But it's clear to me that director Denis Villeneuve cares about Dune, and this is an absolute passion project for him, pouring his heart and soul into making Dune Part 1 and Part 2. The proof is definitely in the pudding, ladies and gentlemen, and the quality of the films speak volumes. I'm sure there are some book purists out there that don't like the films as well, and that is completely okay to have that opinion. But I would argue with anyone that says the director hasn't respected Frank Herbert's work. First of all, I can't highlight this enough, this film is very good, and I highly recommend it to anyone that is a fan of Dune, sci-fi in general, or big blockbusters. The acting was on point throughout, and I thought everyone did a great job in this film. Shout out to Timothée Chalamet. If you're not sure why he is the hottest thing in Hollywood right now, watch this film and you'll see why. Transitioning the character of Paul Atreides, the boy, innocent and somewhat naive in Part 1, to the prophesized chosen one, who has a taste for blood and revenge, regardless of consequences, was expertly acted by Timothée Chalamet. Co-stars Austin Butler and Zendaya also killed it in their respective roles. Fremen tribe leader Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem, was excellent and had me laughing every time he was convinced that Paul was the Lisan al-Gaib. Further shout out to both Zendaya and Timothy for their characters' tragic love story that they portrayed. I thought they both had excellent on-screen chemistry playing Chani and Paul respectively, and really helped elevate the narrative.
I'd very much like to be equal to you.
Maybe I'll show you the way.
What a winter for Timothée Chalamet. Wonka, and now this? This is literally Timothée Chalamet's world, and we're just living in it. Now, this is where Dune truly shines. It is the definition of visual showpiece, from costume design and makeup, set design and on-location shooting, all the way to the special effects. It's so beautifully shot, and esteemed cinematographer Greg Fraser smashed it out of the park as always. Hans Zimmer is back for Part 2, and his score is a masterpiece as always, evoking emotion in ways only Hans can do. Chani and Paul's theme elevates the love story tenfold. You're honestly doing yourself a disservice if you don't see this film in IMAX. Jackson, enough about the lovey-dovey stuff. What about the action sequences? The explosions? The bloody sandworms? Okay. Don't worry guys, there are plenty of action sequences scattered throughout the film. And of course, they are well shot and choreographed, just like everything else in this film. Watching Austin Butler's character, who by the way I can't pronounce and won't even attempt to, fight in the Colosseum was one of the coolest things I've seen on screen in a while. By now you're probably starting to wonder, if everything is sunshine and rainbows, and whether I'm just one massive fanboy. Well, not quite, ladies and gentlemen. There are some negatives, but I hope the review so far has painted a bit of a picture to the quality of this film. Now, I know I said I wouldn't bang on about changes from the book, but how can you not mention Paul's sister, Alia, being a literal talking fetus and not a live character as per the book? I don't mind weird shit, honestly I don't. I'm a huge fan of sci-fi and fantasy in general, but to your average Joe, I'm sure they would think this is hella weird, and maybe one step too far for some. It reminded me of the game Death Stranding. If you know, you know. The lack of Alia also changes some of the plot as well, particularly Paul killing the Baron in place of his sister, which I was fine with, by the way, and it made sense in Paul's rapid ascension to power, showcased in the film. But I could see this being an issue to some purists. The pacing takes a hit at the midway stage of the film, and I'm sure some of you may even say the film's a bit boring, or that it drags somewhat, especially as the first hour or so completely focuses on Paul becoming accepted as Fremen. In a lot of ways, it was similar to Star Wars The Book of Boba Fett, where Boba Fett becomes a member of the Tusken Raiders. Of course, I know Dune came first and it heavily inspired Star Wars, before anyone pipes up. Whilst I don't necessarily agree with some of these criticisms, I can appreciate why your average cinema goer may have these thoughts, particularly as the runtime is 2 hours and 47 minutes long. By the time we get to the big climax of the film, the battle for Arrakis against the Harkonnens, I must say it was over very quickly.
That's what she said.
Gurney coming back and providing Paul with the family nukes almost felt too convenient, but it wasn't the sole reason why they were victorious, so I can let it slide. In summary, I really enjoyed Dune Part 2, and even if you want to debate my score of 9 out of 10, it really is hard to deny that this is objectively a very good sequel and film. It's being universally praised by both the critics and members of public alike, and I would highly recommend Dune Part 2, and 1 of course, to anyone. Previously I asked the question, can Dune Part 2 save cinema? And based on the reported opening weekend figures of $81.5 million domestic and $97 million overseas, totaling a whopping $178.5 million worldwide, it's definitely looking like a monster hit. I can see this having the legs to do some huge numbers in the coming weeks, which is fantastic for all the cinema theatres out there. Let me know in the comments below whether you've seen Dune Part 2 yet, and if you have, what did you think? And if you're new here, then welcome to the channel. I cover all things TV and film, and I hope you stick around as we grow this community. Subscribing is free, and it really helps with the growth and scope of this channel. My goal is to get large enough to have actual discussions about all things TV and film, collaborate with other channels, and discuss the hottest releases with other like-minded people, such as yourself live or in the comments. That's a wrap for this video, but thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.